The bad news continues to spread across the fantasy hockey realm. The injuries are piling on across the National Hockey League, but don't you worry, I'll help guide you to the promised land. Let's get into today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. I am your host, Steel Roden, flying solo for a Thursday episode. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. We got a lot to talk about. Like I said, off the top, the injuries continue to pile on. And for fantasy GMs out there who are in the top 10 in a playoff spot and have some of these players that we're going to be talking about, it's bad news. Scary injury for both Miro Heiskanen and Kaiden Guhle. Nico Hischier out week to week. There is some positive news that I want to talk about. Drew Doughty's debut against the Florida Panthers. Also, not as much special as Drew Doughty, but John Klingberg is nearing his debut with the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe some fantasy implications out there, especially with some of these injuries to the defenseman. And of course, like we always do at the end of every single episode, big time bets, 10 games on the board. We're going to get to all of that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, Game Time. Make sure you go download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Bad news. We just talked about Kirill Kaprizov. He's out for a minimum of 4 weeks on our last episode. Could be longer than that. Scary news as well for Miro Heiskanen, Kaiden Guhle, and Nico Hischier, fantasy GM owners out there who have them on their roster. Let's start off with Miro Heiskanen. Tough blow for the Dallas Stars and for him. Scary injury. You know, there's a lot of talk and a lot of narrative out there right now, especially on Twitter, on X, about exactly what happened on this play. People calling Mark Stone the dirty player, which I happen to agree with. I think he can be very dirty, very hypocritical. He can do things to opponents, but if it happens to him, loses his temper. He just absolutely gets red in the face, steam out the ears. But on this play, I think it's a little wishy-washy. It's not as black and white as we want to, as we think it is. Some people just want to see what they want to see. But if you look closely at what happened on the play, you can see Rupe Hintz's hockey stick catch Mark Stone's left skate, which causes him to trip in this situation, which makes him go headfirst right into Miro Heiskanen's knees. So it was a scary injury to say the least. Heiskanen was helped off the ice. He did not return. He's currently listed day-to-day. So fantasy implications-wise, it is a tough blow to any fantasy team out there. He's been rock solid. He was currently on a 5-game point streak, 5 straight assists, playing some heavy minutes. The shots were up, 6 shots in the last 5. The blocks were up as well. I still think this is a player that a lot of fantasy hockey, the fantasy hockey community like to put on a pedestal. I don't think he's as good fantasy-wise as people think he is. When you look at where he was at the beginning of the season, ranking-wise on Yahoo, he was ranked preseason at 89. He's currently ranked outside outside 250. I believe 289 is exactly where he's currently ranked at right now. Even with that being said, he's still a solid fantasy defenseman. There's been a clear regression over the last 3 seasons, 25 points in 50 games, 108 shots, 85 blocks, and 17 hits. There's a clear outlier in my eyesight with the 73 points back in the 2022-23 season. Regardless, I still think there's a lot of fantasy value to be held with this player. I'm going to talk about some of the players I think fantasy owners who have him can target in the time being. Again, listed as day-to-day, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's out for more than a week based on what I saw from the play and the injury. Miro Heiskanen, we're going to talk about some replacements. I want to talk about some of the other guys that are also injured. Kaiden Guhle, obviously not as big as fantasy value as Heiskanen, but he also left early and did not return in the game against the Winnipeg Jets. Tough injury, fluky play. It looked like he just seemed to catch an edge there. He's out indefinitely after undergoing surgery to repair a lacerated quadricep muscle in his left leg. It's just terrible news overall for the Montreal Canadiens, who have been playing such great hockey. He's been stepping up in a big way, getting over 21 minutes of average ice time. He's got 3 points in his last 5 games, only 14 points on the season. But peripheral wise, I think he's been pretty sound. 100 blocks, 67 hits, 58 shots. It's really the blocks and the hits you look at right now. I believe he was only rostered at 10% on Yahoo. Regardless, he does fill out those peripherals. He's been playing really good hockey for this Montreal Canadiens team so far this season, outside of obviously the offensive production, which has never been a strong suit of his game so far in his 3-year stint in the National Hockey League. So tough loss for Montreal, but even a bigger blow to the New Jersey Devils right now. Nico Hischier out week to week with an upper body injury, a player who has led this team all season long in the goal department, 24 goals on the season, 5 more, 5 better than Jack Hughes, who is second in the goal category. 43 points on the season for Nico Hischier as well. Just a crucial player and centerman for this team right now. They've already lost Jacob Markstrom, which is a huge blow for them in the blue paint. We talked about the value for Jake Allen. So overall, these 3 players, they're going to be out for at least a while. In my eyes, especially with Miro Heiskanen, from what I saw in the play. Some of the players I think you can replace them with right now, especially defensive-wise. Jake Middleton, Racco Gudis, Bowen, Byram, Jackson Lacombe, who's been fantastic for the Anaheim Ducks over the last stretch of games. You know, a guy who somewhat fills out the peripherals, gets some power play time. Close to 25 points on the season. If you're looking for those peripherals, Racco Gudis rostered at 36% right now. Offensively, only 12 points, but 165 hits, 120 blocks with 60 penalty minutes. Jake Middleton is a guy I like this season as well. Owen Power, Bowen Byram, who have played great over the last couple of games for the Buffalo Sabres. Still struggling at some points, some inconsistency in their game. Regardless of that, those are some options to help in the meantime with some of these players who are injured, especially if Miro Heiskanen is out for longer than a week. Nico Hischier, who is out on a week-to-week basis. There's some guys out there. Go back to our Monday waiver wire episode. We talked about a lot of forwards out there, fantasy-wise, who can help in these sort of situations with these injuries. But yeah, those 3 injuries are deadly to any fantasy hockey owner who has those guys on their team, especially Nico Hischier and Miro Heiskanen. Tough blows to the team. In hindsight, you know, we never really expect these things. It's hard to predict injuries. Some of these fluky plays, like I said, just a little bit weird, scenario situation with Rupe Hintz and Mark Stone catching an edge with Kaiden Guhle, Nico Hischier, week to week with an upper body injury. But these things happen. You need to be prepared. You need to be on the ball, on the waiver wire at all times when these injuries come up into play. There's also another defenseman I want to talk about who could replace Miro Heiskanen in this situation. He's already going up in value right now. I believe he's up 10% in the last week on Yahoo. There's still some availability on ESPN. We're going to get to that after the break. Of course, we're going to get to big time bets at the end of the episode. 10 games on the board for Thursday night. I got some picks that I'm absolutely feeling for all of you. And once again, we're just going to do a 10-game parlay just for fun. Just going to pick some of my favorite money line in all 10 matchups. We're going to get to that at the end of the episode. But first, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you're like me and love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy, then Game Time is the app for you. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year, even going to Scotiabank for those Maple Leaf games. The energy and excitement, it's absolutely unforgettable. Now, with Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to this upcoming Maple Leafs Wild game. Unfortunately, I couldn't get them. I had some other business to attend to. but I still found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip isn't here, but I know he really does appreciate all that love and support. Continue to leave the comments on the YouTube channel. Continue to message us on X, on Twitter, whatever you want to call it, with any questions, anything you have, any opinions you have, fantasy hockey-wise, in general, National Hockey League-wise. You can always DM us or message us on Twitter, on X, or leave the comments on the YouTube channel. Just got finished talking about some of the injuries that happened over the last couple of days. Kirill Kaprizov, Miro Heiskanen, Nico Hischier, Kaiden Guhle. The NHL 2024-25 season debut for Drew Doughty is in full effect. He played last night against the Florida Panthers. I'm actually recording this as that game is taking place right now, so I'm going to be tuning in for the second half of that game. Watching the highlights over again. I believe at this point it was 1-0 Florida. Drew Doughty, unfortunately, was on the ice. He was a -1 at the time. I still think there's a ton of value to be had with Drew Doughty this upcoming season. Maybe getting his legs under him, catching that stamina, getting that stamina back. He's somehow in consideration for the Four Nations, Four Nations tourney coming up, Four Nations face-off tournament coming up in February. He still has a couple of weeks before that happens. So depending on how he looks and what the LA Kings want, there's a possibility he fills in for Alex Pietrangelo as a defensive player on the blue line. Of course, Drew Doughty, though, 63% rostered on Yahoo right now. I believe it's 40 to 45% on ESPN. This is a player that still holds a lot of value. I've seen already across the 5 leagues that I'm in, Brant Clark has been dropped at a surprising rate, I want to say, but also not surprising. Drew Doughty comes back. He immediately gets tossed back onto that first power play spot, quarterbacking on top, on special teams. He's going to be getting some penalty kill time as well. 35 years old coming into this season, coming off a 50-point season last year, 52 points the year prior to that. He hits, he blocks, he shoots the puck. There's only a certain amount of games left, 30 to 35 games left in the season for most of these teams out here. I still think Drew Doughty holds a ton of value, and especially if you have Miro Heiskanen or someone, another defenseman injured on your team right now, he is one to target. I personally have a lot at stake with this player. I drafted him on my team in the late rounds, bottom 5 rounds of my fantasy hockey draft. Fortunately for me, I didn't have a lot of injuries this season with the rest of my team, so I was fortunate enough to keep him stashed on the IR up until this point where I activated him. I got away with some of these injuries that I had, so fortunately for me, he's activated now. He's actually being considered in a trade that Flip and I were alluding to on yesterday's episode, which I might break down on tomorrow's episode, maybe at the end of this episode as well. But Drew Doughty, go get him if he's available. Tons of fantasy value, especially for fantasy GMs out there who have some injured defensemen. I also mentioned some defensemen in the first segment that you could target who are below 50% rostered. Over to this John Klingberg take. There's really not much to be said. I just think it's very interesting, what's going on. It's funny that the Edmonton Oilers always bring in these ex-Toronto Maple Leaf players. When you look at the team now, John Klingberg, Connor Brown, just so many ex-Maple Leaf players that have gone through the Edmonton Oilers after being a part of that organization. However, I just think it's interesting for a guy of John Klingberg. They sign him where he would fit into this lineup, probably, being put on that third D pairing with Troy Stetcher potentially in light of Ty Emberson, but it's just something to keep an eye on for the time being. Once again, maybe that is a fantasy value angle to be had with some of these injuries that we're talking about. Drew Doughty, John Klingberg, interesting to say the least with John Klingberg, but Drew Doughty out there, if he's available, go pick him up, which actually will bring me to this fantasy hockey trade I want to break down. I want to know your opinions. Leave your thoughts and comments on the YouTube channel, on X, about this trade. So there's a lot going on in my fantasy hockey keeper league with my boys back from Stouffville. I've been very interested in Adam Fox, trying to facilitate a trade for him. In return, these core pieces that are in this trade right now, it's Adam Fox and Clayton Keller, and I still think there's a little bit of a disadvantage of giving up Clayton Keller in this trade. So I'm trying to add some pieces to make it a little bit more fair for both sides. So I want to get your thoughts on this trade right now. I sent a trade offer. Believe it was Quinton Byfield, it was Drew Doughty, and it was Clayton Keller. 3-piece deal on my side. In return, I would be getting Adam Fox and JT Miller. So it's a 3-for-2 deal. Again, we're going back and forth. There might have to be some draft picks involved in this play. I don't think I'd be willing to give up a first rounder in this sense, but that's the deal on the table. Quinton Byfield, Drew Doughty, and Clayton Keller. And in return, I would be receiving Adam Fox and JT Miller. In this specific instance, in our league, we have a category for defenseman points, which I have been struggling very, very poorly at this season. Some of my guys, Darnell Nurse, Mackenzie Weegar, John Carlson, Rasmus Sandin. I've been holding on to Drew Doughty, who's now just been activated. So I think it gives me a little bit more leeway with this trade now that he's back in the lineup for the LA Kings. So let me know what your thoughts are on this trade, what you would add, what you would take away draft pick wise. Also just the overall thoughts on that trade. Once again, Drew Doughty, Quinton Byfield, Clayton Keller, I'd be giving up, and in return receiving JT Miller and Adam Fox from one of my buddies in this league. Let me know in the comments what you think. We're going to get to big time bets after the break. So much to talk about with this 10-game board. 3 favorite picks, of course. And then just for fun, we're going to break down all my favorite money line picks and make a fun 10-leg parlay. All of that and more coming up after the break. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. It means the world to Flip and I. I know he's not here right now. He's out enjoying that Minnesota Wild Toronto Maple Leafs game at Scotiabank. I know there was nothing much to enjoy in that first period, down 2-0 for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but we're getting after it still with big time bets. Lots to talk about with the 10-game board on Thursday. My 3 favorite picks to start off, and then we'll break down that 10-leg parlay. First pick of the night. Got to go with the Oilers on the money line against the Detroit Red Wings. I just think in this instance, I think the Red Wings are going to get exposed here. They're going to get caught flat-footed with all that speed that Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Zach Hyman have. It's in Edmonton. The Detroit Red Wings are on the road. They've been playing really good hockey, but with McDavid back, especially after the suspension, big 4-2 win over the Seattle Kraken the other night. I'm taking the Oilers on the money line at home. They're 6-3-1 against the Red Wings in their last 10. I just think McDavid's going to come out, shot out of a cannon, like I said last time, and that's exactly what happened. 6-3-1 for the Oilers over the Red Wings in the last 10. That is my first pick, Oilers on the money line. Second pick, going with the hottest team in the National Hockey League right now, the Islanders on the money line against the Philadelphia Flyers. They've won 5 games in a row, a big 5-2 win over the Colorado Avalanche on Tuesday. The Islanders are also 6-3-1 against the Flyers in their last 10. This is one of those scenarios where it works out, history-wise over the last 10. It also works out in the sense that the Flyers, this is the second game of a back-to-back situation. The Flyers took on the New Jersey Devils last night. They're actually in the midst of their game right now, 2-0 Devils in the middle of the second period. I just think it's going to be a lot for the Flyers. Islanders are playing some really good hockey, getting some really good goaltending Ilya Sorokin right now. And it's crazy, this Eastern Conference standings. You look down from the first wild card spot all the way to the second last place team, Pittsburgh Penguins. There is an 8-point difference right now, a 7-point difference in that second wild card spot, which the Tampa Bay Lightning are holding on to, which brings me to my third pick of the night. I'm going with the Lightning on the money line against the LA Kings. Once again, it's the second game of a back-to-back situation for the LA Kings. They take on the Florida Panthers yesterday. The Lightning are 7-2-1 in the last 10 games against LA. They play really good hockey at home. Tough loss against the Chicago Blackhawks. And this is a big game. Like I said, the gap between the teams from the wild card spot to the bottom of the Eastern Conference, it's so close. I mean, everyone's on the edge of their seat. Everyone's rooting for the opposition to win games. They're rooting for their team, obviously, to win. In this sense, Lightning play really good at home. Second game of a back-to-back for the LA Kings. And the Lightning can't afford to lose these games in this instance if they want to make the postseason once again. They've actually lost 4 of their last 5, losing to Toronto, Montreal, Detroit Red Wings, and Chicago in the last 5. So they need to bounce back. A big win in a big way against this Kings team, 7-2-1 against them in their last 10. So those are my 3 favorite picks. I'm going straight money line on Thursday for my 3 favorite picks. Lock of the night, Oilers on the money line against the Red Wings. Just for fun, once again, let's do a 10-leg money line parlay with these 10 matchups on the board here. Let's start off with the first one. First game of the night, obviously, Lightning and Kings. I just said it. Lightning on the money line is my first pick. Second pick, Hurricanes are playing insane hockey right now. They're cashing up to the Washington Capitals. They're still 7 points back, but 7-1-2 in their last 10 games. Hurricanes on the money line against the Blackhawks for the second pick. Wild playing a second of a back-to-back. I actually like the Canadians in this instance. This one could go, it's a coin toss here. I'm going to go with the Canadians at home. So I'm going with all home teams so far to start this one off. That's where it changes here. I'm taking the Capitals on the money line against the Ottawa Senators. The Capitals are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. The Senators are, in a top spot right now. They're 7-2-1. This is going to be a really good game. I just really like the way Logan Thompson is playing. I really like the way that top 6 forward group is playing. Dylan Strome, Andrew Mangiapane, Tom Wilson, Alexander Ovechkin, of course. That's the 4th pick of the night. Capitals on the money line. Jets versus Bruins. Going with Jets. Hands down. Best team in the National Hockey League right now. Big win over the Canadiens the other night. Once again, Islanders on the money line. Oilers on the money line. You got Ducks and Flames. This one's an interesting spot to be put in. You could go either way here. Ducks offensively, big win for them over the Seattle Kraken the other night as well. I'm actually going to go with the Flames at home here. Probably going to get some, minus 182 for the Flames at home. I like them in this instance. They play some really good hockey against the Ducks. Golden Knights, minus 245 on the money line for the 9th pick of this parlay. In this instance, last game of the night, Sharks on the money line against the Seattle Kraken. Big win for the Sharks over the Penguins the other day, which cashed out my parlay. If you didn't see that on X, on Twitter, I'm going with the Sharks. Plus, it doesn't show the money line right now or the odds for the Sharks, but that is the 10-leg parlay just for fun. Let me know what you're feeling, what picks you like, what picks you don't like. I'll repeat it once again. Lightning, Hurricanes, Canadians, Capitals, Jets, Islanders, Red Wings, Flames, Golden Knights, and Sharks for the 10-leg money line parlay on Thursday night. Let me know what you went with. Let me know what you took out of this parlay. We're just doing it for fun. Take your favorite picks out of here. My 3 favorite picks, once again, Oilers, Islanders, and Lightning on the money line for Thursday night. We're trying to win some money. We're trying to win some extra cash. Let's do it together out here with big time bets. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL Podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link in the description below, so you don't have to go searching for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. from both Flip and I. I know he's not here, but we wish you good luck with your weekly matchups. We wish you good luck with those bets on Thursday night, and I shall see you back here again tomorrow. Peace.